Hello everyone and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel.
Is it really over for Ridge and Taylor? Mothers and their children. Taylor Hayes starts to realize some harsh truths after having a heart-to-heart conversation with Eric Forrester. She also knows that the newfound confidence that Ridge Forrester sees is just a facade. She has made an effort to avoid Brooke Logan's shadow, but that's harder said than done. Eric doesn't have anything bad to say about Taylor, but he has always been on Team Brooke, especially since he is married to Brooke and they have 2 kids together. Now, Taylor feels she needs to discuss this all with Ridge, so the pair has a very frank talk about the forever elephant in the room. They have discussed it numerous times before. Ridge has to admit that his feelings for Brooke will always be there, but he is committed to making it work with Taylor. Will Taylor realize that Ridge is with her out of obligation and not because he is as madly in love with her as she has always been with him? Ridge and Taylor better hurry up if they want to end their relationship once more because... Brooke's distraction. Brooke might have told Hope Logan that she will wait for Ridge forever, but who is this she sees before her? Is it really Nick Marone looking as handsome as ever? Be still Brooke's heart. She is thrilled to see Nick, and Nick is certainly thrilled to see Brooke as he plants a passionate kiss on her within minutes. This could be the fulfillment of Hope's wish. There is a new man in town to take her mother's mind off her perceived destiny. Ridge won't be happy when he sees Nick is back in Los Angeles, as the 2 men have never gotten along. Mothers and their children, a tangle of hearts. Taylor had spent years as a psychiatrist helping others untangle the chaos in their lives, yet her own had remained a complex knot tied between Ridge, her children, and the ever-looming presence of Brooke Logan. Her role as a mother was something sacred. With Steffi and Thomas grown and forging lives of their own, she had hoped she could finally focus on her own happiness. But happiness remained elusive. The truth hit harder after her talk with Eric. Her newfound confidence, praised by friends and even admired by Ridge, was beginning to feel like an armor she wore rather than a state of mind. She had grown, yes. She had stepped out from under Brooke's long-cast shadow. But stepping out and staying out were 2 different things. Her children saw her strength, but they didn't always see her pain. She kept that from them, a protective instinct that had only grown sharper over the years. She didn't want Thomas thinking she was suffering because Ridge couldn't love her as fiercely as she loved him. And Steffi, who had been Taylor's fiercest champion, deserved to believe that her mother was strong, independent, and secure in her choices. Yet the truth was more complicated. Taylor had poured so much of herself into a future with Ridge that she forgot what her life looked like without him. She wasn't dependent on him, but emotionally, she had always left a door open. Just in case. The talk they've had so many times before. Later that afternoon, Ridge arrived. Taylor had asked to speak, and he had agreed. He knew what it would be about, how could he not? These talks were almost ritualistic by now. A dance of truth and avoidance, of longing and resignation. They sat in the same living room where decades of memories lingered in the walls, weddings, deaths, betrayals, reunions. It was a sacred space and a haunted one. Ridge, Taylor began, her voice measured but laced with tension. We can't keep doing this. You and I, we always circle back to the same questions, the same feelings. But are we really building something? Or are we just afraid to admit it's over? Ridge sighed, rubbing his temples. He looked tired. Not physically, but emotionally drained, as if the weight of the past 20 years had finally caught up with him. I care about you, Taylor. I always will. You're the mother of my children, and you've stood by me when others wouldn't. That matters. You matter. But you love Brooke, she said quietly. He paused. There it was, spoken aloud. The elephant had been invited into the room. I'll always love her, he admitted, but that doesn't mean I don't want this to work. You and I have something different, something strong. We're grounded. It's not fireworks, but maybe that's a good thing. Taylor flinched internally at the word, not fireworks. She didn't want to be the safe option. She wanted to be the first choice. The passionate, impossible to resist love. Not the backup plan. Ridge, you can't be with me out of obligation, she whispered. That's not fair to either of us. I want someone who chooses me, wholly, without hesitation. I deserve that. When history repeats. Their love story had been interrupted so many times, by fate, by tragedy, by betrayal. Taylor remembered the years she was presumed dead, how Ridge had found comfort with Brooke, how their children grew up watching their parents fall in and out of love with each other. For a while, it seemed inevitable that Ridge and Taylor would always come back to each other. But lately, inevitability felt like a curse, not a blessing. Like a rut they couldn't escape. The hardest part was knowing that Ridge wasn't a villain. He wasn't cruel. He genuinely cared. But caring wasn't the same as choosing. She remembered when he promised her the world after Brooke's latest affair had torn them apart. How many times had he sworn it was different this time? That he was done with Brooke? That he was ready for a life with Taylor? Each time, the cycle repeated. And now, Taylor had to ask herself the question she had avoided for years: was love enough, if it wasn't returned in equal measure? Brooke's distraction, the return of Nick Marone. As Taylor tried to navigate the crossroads of her heart, another twist unfolded elsewhere in Los Angeles. Brooke Logan, legendary temptress, enduring beauty, and the woman forever linked to Ridge's heart, found herself face to face with a man from her past. Nick Marone. He was as handsome and charismatic as ever, standing in the lobby of Forrester Creations with that same roguish grin. The kind that had made Brooke's heart race years ago, and evidently still did. Nick, she gasped, stunned. What are you doing here? Couldn't stay away, he replied with a wink. And when I heard you were single again. Before she could reply, he kissed her. Passionately. Boldly. As if the years had melted away. Hope Logan's dream come true? From the doorway, Hope Logan watched in stunned silence. Her mother had spent years pining after Ridge, forgoing other possibilities in her life in service of a connection that might never truly deliver what she wanted. But here, in this moment, Hope saw a glimmer of something different. Could Nick Marone be the man to pull Brooke away from the gravitational pull of Ridge Forrester? It was a question with seismic implications. If Brooke finally moved on, Ridge would no longer feel pulled in two directions. Maybe he could finally commit fully to Taylor or to his own clarity. But it wasn't that simple. It never was. Ridge's dilemma, loyalty versus passion. Ridge saw Nick before he heard the news. Walking through Forrester Creations and seeing that familiar face was like stepping into a time machine. All the old tension, the rivalry, the betrayal, it all came rushing back. He found Brooke later that day, and the air between them practically crackled. So, Nick's back, Ridge said tersely. Brooke turned, surprised to see him. Yes. He just showed up. And kissed you, he added. She didn't deny it. Ridge's jaw clenched. You said you'd wait for me. And I meant it, Brooke replied. But how long am I supposed to wait, Ridge? Until you break Taylor's heart again? Until we're both old and gray? Nick reminded me that I deserve to be wanted, now. Ridge didn't answer. He couldn't. Taylor's turning point. When Taylor heard the news about Brooke and Nick, she felt something unexpected. Relief. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel threatened. She felt free. The emotional triangle that had defined so much of her adult life was finally being broken by an external force. But that didn't mean the decision was easy. She met Ridge one final time, this time on her own terms. You don't have to choose anymore, she told him calmly. Brooke's found someone else. And I've found myself. Ridge stared at her, eyes full of emotion. I want to be with you, Taylor. I believe you think that, she replied. But I can't live off promises anymore. I deserve certainty. And so do you. So, is it really over? The answer isn't simple. Ridge and Taylor's bond will never truly vanish. They are connected by history, by family, by shared love and pain. But sometimes, love isn't enough to sustain a future. As Ridge watched Taylor walk away that day, her head held high, her stride confident, he knew something had shifted. This wasn't just another break. This felt final. Taylor, for her part, felt more alive than she had in years. The ache was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She wasn't bitter. She wasn't broken. She was free. And as Brooke explored a future with Nick, and Ridge reevaluated his life from the middle of the emotional ruins he had helped create, the once inevitable story of Ridge and Taylor began to feel like a closed chapter. Taylor's revenge hooks up with Bill Spencer. Ridge Forrester's relationship with Taylor Hayes. Ridge won't be able to stand seeing Brooke Logan with her ex, and Taylor could walk out on him because of it. She might even get involved with a rival. Spoilers ahead for what's coming up next week on Bold and Beautiful. Brooke wins over Ridge. Brooke has been pleading with Ridge Forrester to forgive her and take her back ever since Taylor Hayes and Ridge Forrester appeared together on Bold and Beautiful. Ridge has scoffed at Brooke's pleas, and Taylor hasn't had to worry about questioning his loyalty. However, Taylor will begin to doubt herself when she observes Ridge's envious behavior when Brooke moves on. The fact that Brooke is moving on with Ridge's brother Nick Marone is like a knife in the back, according to Bold and the Beautiful spoilers. However, Brooke could move on with anyone. Nick hasn't been in Los Angeles in years, giving his half-brother a run for his money. Brooke argues that she was previously married to Nick as well. Of course, if you are familiar with CBS soap history, then you know he was also married to Taylor Hayes too. Reunion with Nick and Brooke. The writers of BNB appear to be moving quickly toward a reunion between Brooke and Nick. But, when Ridge fights for his ex, Taylor is going to be the odd woman out again. According to soap spoilers, Nick will return for a long time, so Taylor might leave town and leave Ridge. Who would want to stick around and watch the love of your life fight for the love of his life? However, there's also the chance that Taylor could start seeing someone new and dipping her toes in the dating pool. Bill Spencer is as financially independent as a penny and probably needs a therapist right now. Will Taylor begin canoodling with Ridge's rival to bring Ridge's loss to his attention? Taylor Hayes had finally reached a place of peace, or so she believed, when Ridge Forrester, the man she had loved and lost countless times over the years, returned to her arms with solemn promises of stability, loyalty, and a future unmarred by the endless tug-of-war with Brooke Logan. For a time, she believed him. Their rekindled romance was warm, comforting, even familiar. They shared memories, laughs, and a renewed commitment to putting the past behind them. But in the world of the Forresters, peace is a fragile illusion. It didn't take long before the cracks began to form. Taylor noticed it first in Ridge's eyes, those lingering glances toward Brooke, the way his voice softened when he mentioned her name, even the hint of regret that flickered across his face when he thought no one was watching. Brooke had been quiet, respectful of their reunion at first, but Taylor knew better. Brooke Logan was never one to stay on the sidelines for long, especially not when it came to Ridge. And sure enough, Brooke began appearing more and more frequently in their lives, under the guise of co-parenting or Forrester business. Taylor, ever the professional, attempted to remain poised, but her heart knew what her mind was trying to deny. Brooke still had a grip on Ridge's heart. And when Brooke reconnected with Nick Marone, Ridge's own brother, it became painfully obvious that Ridge was not as unaffected as he pretended to be. His anger at Brooke's new relationship was palpable, irrational, and deeply telling. Taylor watched as Ridge lashed out, not at Brooke, but at Nick, projecting his jealousy and unspoken feelings with each word, each passive-aggressive remark. The hypocrisy was suffocating. Taylor, who had bent over backwards to be the loyal partner, was now watching the man she loved unravel over another woman moving on. And that was the moment something inside her snapped. She realized she had spent far too long being the second choice. In all the years of their twisted, complicated love story, Ridge had always bounced between her and Brooke like a pendulum, torn, indecisive, selfishly romanticizing both women while never fully committing to either. Taylor had forgiven him too many times, sacrificed too much of herself, and for what? To be sidelined yet again the moment Brooke batted her lashes? Not this time. Taylor refused to be the discarded option. The quiet, sensible therapist was gone. What remained now was a woman scorned and finally ready to exact her own form of poetic justice. If Ridge couldn't appreciate her, someone else would. And that someone might just be the last man Ridge would ever expect, Bill Spencer. The idea first came to her like a whisper, laughable, almost absurd. Bill Spencer, the ruthless media tycoon with a history of chaos and questionable morals, was not exactly relationship material. But he was single, sharp, charismatic, and, most importantly, a direct rival to Ridge. The more she considered it, the more it made sense. Taylor and Bill had shared moments in the past, not romantic ones necessarily, but charged ones, full of tension and unspoken curiosity. He had always been somewhat fascinated by her intelligence, her strength, her calm exterior masking deep emotion. And she, in turn, had always wondered what it would be like to fall for someone who wasn't emotionally torn between two women. Someone who could offer fire, passion, and maybe even a little revenge. Their first official encounter post-Ridge was nothing short of electric. Taylor had gone to confront Bill about a Forrester Creations smear article he was rumored to be publishing, but what started as a heated argument quickly transformed into something else. Bill, in his usual blunt manner, admitted he'd been watching the train wreck of Ridge's love life and couldn't understand why Taylor kept putting herself through it. "You deserve better than that clown," he had said, with that trademark Spencer arrogance. And for the first time, Taylor didn't bristle at the insult. She laughed. Genuinely. Something about Bill's unapologetic honesty, his lack of sugarcoating, felt refreshing. One coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into drinks. And drinks turned into a night neither of them were entirely prepared for. The next morning, Taylor woke up in Bill's penthouse, equal parts bewildered and exhilarated. Had she really just spent the night with Ridge Forrester's nemesis? Yes. And she didn't regret a single moment. Bill was attentive, surprisingly gentle, and above all, respectful of her emotional baggage. He didn't push, didn't pry, just listened, made her laugh, and reminded her of what it felt like to be truly seen. Taylor wasn't naive enough to think it was love, not yet anyway. But it was something real, something freeing. Back at Forrester Creations, the rumor mill ignited like wildfire. Ridge, upon hearing whispers of Taylor's new companion, initially dismissed them as gossip. But when he saw a photo of Taylor and Bill having brunch, smiling, looking relaxed and intimate, something inside him fractured. He confronted Taylor, of course, demanding answers as if he had any right. She stood her ground, refusing to justify herself to a man who couldn't even stay loyal in his own heart. Ridge couldn't take it. The idea of Taylor with Bill Spencer of all people, drove him to the brink. He started spiraling, lashing out at his team, snapping at his family, unable to focus on anything but the image of Taylor finding happiness without him. And not just happiness, power. Because make no mistake, a Taylor-Bill union wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. With Bill's media empire and Taylor's reputation, they could shift public perception, control narratives, even influence fashion lines. They were a power couple in the making, and Ridge knew it. Brooke, meanwhile, tried to maintain a semblance of calm with Nick, but even she felt the seismic shift. Ridge wasn't just jealous, he was unraveling. His ego couldn't comprehend a world where both Brooke and Taylor had moved on, leaving him without the fallback he always assumed would be there. Nick, for his part, was loving the chaos. Always the black sheep of the Forrester clan, he took a certain pleasure in knowing his presence still managed to throw Ridge off balance. But as he rekindled his connection with Brooke, he also began to notice the sincerity in her affection. Brooke wasn't just using him as a rebound, she genuinely seemed ready to build something new, something free of the Ridge triangle. The tables had turned. Ridge, once the center of attention, now found himself on the outside, looking in. And Taylor? She was thriving. Her sessions with patients took on new meaning, her energy returned, and for the first time in years, she felt wanted without complication. Bill surprised her, too. He wasn't just using her to get under Ridge's skin, he was attentive, engaged, even vulnerable in moments she hadn't expected. He spoke of regrets, of fatherhood, of wanting more than power and wealth. Taylor saw a side of him no one else had cared to notice. And as their relationship deepened, it became clear, this wasn't just a fling. This was a new chapter. Of course, no happiness in Los Angeles lasts long. Quinn Fuller, always one to stir the pot, caught wind of Taylor and Bill's budding romance and decided to throw herself into the drama. She warned Taylor that Bill was incapable of long-term love, that he'd break her heart like he did Katie's. But Taylor, more grounded than ever, didn't flinch. She knew the risks, and for once, she was okay with them. She wasn't looking for fairy tales. She was looking for honesty. And with Bill, even in his most abrasive moments, that's exactly what she got. Meanwhile, Ridge's attempts to win Brooke back were growing more desperate. He sent flowers, letters, even tried to orchestrate a business emergency that required her presence. But Brooke, finally seeing the cycle for what it was, held her ground. "We've done this dance too many times, Ridge," she told him, her voice firm. "I'm tired." And when she said it, she meant it. Ridge was alone. Not just emotionally, but physically. The women who had once warred for his affection were now building futures that had nothing to do with him. And that was a truth he wasn't ready to face. Back at Spencer Publications, Bill made a bold move. He published a glowing feature on Taylor, highlighting her work in mental health advocacy, her charity work, and her resilience in the face of public scrutiny. It was part gesture, part love letter, and Taylor was visibly moved. The article painted her not just as a Forrester X, but as a woman of substance, independence, and grace. Ridge read it with clenched fists. And in a rare moment of vulnerability, he admitted to Eric that he had lost Taylor, not because of what he did, but because of what he didn't do. He never fought hard enough for her, never made her feel like she was enough. And now, someone else was showing her all the things he should have. The final blow came at a Forrester charity gala, where Taylor arrived on Bill's arm, radiant and unapologetic. The room fell silent. Ridge watched from across the ballroom as the woman he'd taken for granted walked confidently past him, her head held high, her fingers interlaced with the man who once tried to destroy him. Brooke gave her a knowing nod, Nick smirked from the sidelines, and in that moment, it was clear to everyone, Taylor Hayes was done being anyone's second choice.